Hi everybody, it's Wednesday afternoon and I know I'm just a couple minutes early, but I'd heard that some people were having some issues with getting online with Facebook Live, and I thought I better pop on here a few minutes early just to make sure I don't have any issues. So I have two things to show you today. One is we are going to color. We're going to color with watercolor pencils and markers, and I'm going to show you different inks to use for different things. But first I want to show you this really cool card set that we created with a bunch of PML cards. Picture My Life cards, so pocket cards. And so I want to show you this Christmas card set. And these were made by using, in this catalog, the Holly and Ivy papers and stickers, and then these Picture My Life cards. Now, what I did to make this easier on all of us, I'm not a big technical person, so I did not do this on the computer. I'm more of a pen and paper person. So basically I marched out on the grid the different cardstocks that you'll be cutting, and what size of each you would need. And so basically this was 2 sheets of red cardstock, a sheet of green, and I used green glitter, but you could use green like evergreen. And then 3 of the prints from the set and 1 sheet of glitter cardstock. And I would recommend gold if you have gold. Most people have some kind of glitter cardstock in their stash because it's such a draw. No matter where you go, everybody seems to be loving the glitter cardstock. But the glitter cardstock that Close to My Heart has is really awesome, so you can certainly get that. I did use some of the stickers out of the sticker sheet, and you can tell you're going to have a lot left over, especially if you get the cardstock pack and the paper pack, because you're going to have 3 sheets of this left plus a whole bunch of cardstock left. I mean, you're going to have pieces left over if you do this. So let me show you. The other thing that I used just before I move these catalogs is the white cards and envelopes pack. It comes with 50 base envelope or base cards and envelopes, and they're really great. So those are amazing. But if you have cards and envelopes, you wouldn't need to buy them. You may even have some of this stuff in your stash. So here's card 1, and you can tell it's just a Picture My Life card. Most of the Picture My Life cards are 4 by 6, and since most cards are 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, they have to be trimmed down just a little bit. And so here's card number 1. I added a little bling. I added some stickles just so you could see what that looks like, because if stickles is a cheap way to go, or you can do buy a pack of bling to add to it. It really adds, I think. So I think that makes it worthwhile. Here, this Picture My Life card is the plaid. It's like a 3 by 4. So most of your cutting on these cards is like 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 to cover the whole card, or a mat for a 3 by 4 card. There's a few strips in here, but you can see here, this is a Picture My Life card. It just makes the card, the center image, added some bling and a sticker. This Believe is a sticker. Here is another one where the Picture My Life card says Merry Everything Happy Always, and I added a sticker, and it just has the animal print. So I'm just going to kind of go through these a little faster just so you can see them. Here you can see the difference. I used green, the evergreen glitter paper, but you could use just plain green or even plain red if you wanted to. Anything back there would look good. This is an entire Picture My Life card. And so is this one. It's just it's just trimmed down and put on a little red mat. And look how cool these cards are. Adding some bling helps. And the other option too is, you know, all the Picture My Life cards, on one side they're like landscape, and then on the other side they're vertical. And so you can change up your card. Like, this was my least favorite card of all. It still looks nice, but it's my least favorite. And so, you know, I could have changed it up, for example. This is a sticker from the sticker sheet. This is just stickers and small parts and pieces. This used 2 Picture My Life cards. Here's one, and it was cut down the center so that you could keep that cool border. And even though that center piece was cut out, you can't tell because there's a strip of glitter paper on top of it. Cool. And then this Picture My Life card was 3x4, and we just trimmed it down to fit into the frame. So that was kind of fun. This is just a Picture My Life card with a strip of glitter and a sticker. Here's another Picture My Life card that's, you know, this is just layered paper with that card. I think it turned out really nice. Look how I don't know if you can tell how sparkly this is, but it's so pretty. It's got gold glitter and green glitter. You would not have to do that, but I just think that's really cool. And it's just a Picture My Life card with a sticker. This one used 2 of the Picture My Life cards. One is the background plaid, and then this is just one, and you can tell we just matted that with gold. Here is this Picture My Life card is actually a calendar. You can kind of see behind the calendar, or behind the sticker, you can see the numbers. I just covered the numbers with a big circle sticker off the sticker sheet, and I think it turned out super cute. This was like one of the last ones that I made because I wasn't sure what to do with that pocket card, and I think that turned out really nice. And here is one. It's just, I stamped the Merry Christmas. You know, several of you got this stamp free last month by buying the special, so I thought, well, I might as well use it because several people have it. But you could use any message you wanted to that's in your stash right there. You could even write in a message or even put a photo on the front. I think that's cool looking. Comfort and Joy papers. This green stripe right here is a Picture My Life card, and then this is stickers, Comfort and Joy. And that's, you know, that's a fairly good size sticker. It would make a really great scrapbook layout sticker, but look how cool that looks. This one's very basic. A Picture My Life card in the back, a Picture My Life card on the front, and I matted it in white, but it wouldn't have to be white. You could do gold or whatever you had. Again, this Picture My Life card is actually a journaling card. You can kind of see the journaling lines on it, and I just stamped the Merry Christmas, but you know, you could put any message there you wanted or even a small picture, and I just blinged it up, added a sticker. And then this one is just strips of paper with Noel stickers in the middle. And then this was when we cut down the Picture My Life cards to make them fit in some of the pages. These are like scraps of various cards, and then a few scraps of paper, and then I used this Merry Christmas sticker a couple times because I had 2 sticker sheets, but you wouldn't have to. You could easily add any message there that you wanted to. This was my bonus card if you have things in your stash that you can use. I mean, the idea is to use up what you've been buying and just update it with the stuff that you love that's current. And I think this makes a really nice pack of cards. I think there's 21 cards in all. I added that 21st card as a bonus card that you would have to figure out what you wanted to put on the front. But I think it looks really nice. And you would certainly have enough cardstock and things left over to add to that I mean, you know, to make even more. I mean, especially if you purchased some extra cardstock to make it go even farther. So I just wanted to show you this because I think this is really cool. There is a consultant online who made a card shop like this one, and there's also several who have used the pumpkin spice to make a card shop like that, where you use these cards to make cards to send to people. But I think the Christmas one is just spectacular. It is, I think, the standout. So I hope that you really love that. I hope that you would like to try it. And I have this sort of this cutting guide, and if you want this, what I'll do is I'll take a close-up picture of each of the cuts. There's a couple of the sheets I had a couple of extra cuts on, just like here where it's kind of blank, because I had planned on making even more cards, but I thought I don't want to make it so big and so clunky, so I just stopped at 20. But oh my gosh, honestly, could have gone on and on. Could use part of it for scrapbook pages and then make Christmas cards as well. So this is just an option, and I wanted to show that to you. Okay. All right, so now we get to the part where we talk about coloring, because there's been a lot of discussion about coloring, and people are asking me how to color, which kind of makes me laugh just a little bit, because I feel like I've been coloring my whole life, and so have you. But all these supplies and things that are out, it really is helpful, I think, to see. Let me get my darker background. I think it helps to have the darker background. So Close to My Heart sells 3 basic black inks. There's black, archival black, and intense black. And these black inks all act a little bit differently with different things that you color. So let me get my fish. This fish is from that Slimline Fishy Greetings. That's the special. And I stamped the first one in just plain black. Now, plain black is a water-based ink. If I put water on this, it's gonna run. Archival black is a solvent ink, and you'll see when I stamp it, it's a darker image, and a lot of people prefer archival black to any of the other blacks because it's blacker. But archival black also can stain your stamps, so that's something to keep in mind if you're somebody who's like, oh, but my stamp's not pristine. It takes a lot more work to get them clean. Intense black is the one that works really well with alcohol markers. It is also a solvent ink, but it's a little more of a hybrid of the two. And so if you were only going to buy one black, you can see my, it's a little stained, right? If you're only going to buy one black, I would recommend Intense Black. Now, look in your stash. You may have more. If you have black inks in your stash like Memento or VersaFine Onyx Black, the Memento Tuxedo Black is great for alcohol markers, and I wrote that on there. It is not good for watercolor. It's a fade resistant dye ink. It's a water based sort of ink, so it works good for the alcohol markers. Now, if you have VersaFine, it's good for watercolor imaging. So if you use that with alcohol markers, it would smudge and smear. So I just wanted to tell you, I have all these inks because I've been I have been stamping for like my whole life, I feel like. So you could get a water brush, or you can just get a paintbrush. I have a small paintbrush. I don't know why I have pulled such a tiny one out, but that'll work. Okay, and then I just have some old napkins here. And whenever I'm going to do any kind of watercolor, you can see my watercolors are well loved. Look at this, how dirty they are. I thought about cleaning this up before I did my live, but honestly, the truth is they look this way almost all the time. So all I'm doing here is, if I had a bigger brush, that would be faster. But I'm just adding some water into here to soften up the paint. And what I like to do is take my wet brush and tap it off just a little. You don't want so much water on your brush. I think that's one of the big things that when I used to watercolor, I always had way too much water. And so you can just put plain water in the well and add a little bit of color to it, and it'll be real fine. Now, if I do that on here, this is the black ink. What you're gonna see is the black smearing into my pink, and my pink doesn't look so pretty and vibrant anymore. Now if I do the same thing with the alcohol ink, it works a little bit better. It doesn't like bleed. So you can kind of see, all I'm doing is doing a super light layer of the pink. And this is the intense black. Same thing, a super light layer. Now the other thing with watercolor is that you can then let that dry a little bit, and then you can come back and you can add, just put a little more pink on your brush, and you can add a little more color wherever you want it. So I like to put the darker part, make it darker where the lines are, like that. So if you're gonna watercolor, you definitely want one of these two inks, or if you have VersaFine in your stash, that's what I would recommend. And then you just basically put down a base of something really light, kind of let that dry, and then you can come back, you can add a little more color. So what I'm doing here is I'm adding a little more paint to my brush and adding it to my water, making it just a little darker. And then you can go back and you can add a little water in wherever you want it darker. And then if you say you did like me, you get too much, you just take a wet brush, a wet clean brush, and just kind of remove some of that. So watercolor is really forgiving. It's a forgiving way to color. It's easier than most. But this is messy. I don't like to get out watercolor paints all the time. So let me show you a couple other watercolor options. How are you doing today, Denise? It's nice to see you guys. I feel like it's, I'm with my friends. I love it. Okay, so one way to watercolor, if you don't have a bunch of watercolors, is to use your dye inks, the water-based dye inks. That's like most of the Stampin' Up! Or the Close to My Heart, or the in the store. They're either pigment or dye. And I'm just taking my wet brush and I'm adding water to some of the ink in the lid. I just squished it. And then that will allow me to paint with my stamping ink. So that way you don't have to go buy a whole bunch more paint. If you have a lot of different colors of inks, you could just watercolor paint using all of your different colors. And then if you want to shade, you just take a darker, that was sage. So now let's say I squish down on New England Ivy. And this is why all of my ink pads look like this when I show them on lives and stuff, is because I do this a lot. This is a lot faster for me than getting out all of the other stuff. Now when I'm going to shade, I always think of what's closest to me is this section right here. What's farthest to me is here, because this fish is sort of round, right? So I'm going to make the darker part around the edge. It's going to look like it's going away from me. And then I'm going to rinse my brush and just water only and very little. And then I'm just going to blend that harsh green so that it still looks real light in the middle. See? Ta-da! So that way when you look at something that's colored, you know, it has dimension. It's dark where it's going away from you and light where it's close up to you. Okay? So the other way that I like to watercolor, besides those, let me get rid of my fish. Get a new piece of, this is just white daisy. This is nothing special. I'm going to put these inks aside for a moment. So I have all these different colors of ink that are out, and I want to show you this one. So one way that, this is toffee, and this is that deer from the Holly and Ivy scrapbooking. It's this deer right here. These deer look so intimidating because this is the first time I've used this one, so it may not stamp perfectly the first time, but all right. So I'm gonna stamp that. And the nice thing about the way they created these stamps is you don't have to color. I mean, look how pretty that is just on its own. But you would have to have the right color of ink to make that work. Like you could emboss that in gold or in brown, like I used toffee, for example. Whenever you stamp with a dye ink, sometimes you can use your water and just dunk your brush in and tap it off. And you can kind of go around the edges like this. And what it does is it makes your stamped image a little murkier. What's the word I want? Like it all kind of starts to hide the sharpness of the lines by adding water to it. And sometimes, hi Heather, sometimes you can even pull that color into the rest of the image and it just looks, it looks watercolored because you took that ink away from the stamped area and pulled it into the white space. So let's just say I take my toffee and I squish it, and then I have some in the lid, and I'm gonna get some water. I have quite a bit of water here. I don't want this a dark color, right? Okay, and then I'm gonna tap it off a little bit on my paper towel. But I could pick up just a little bit of this color and I could go over it again and shade it or darken it even more. I mean, and because I had wet my paper before, it may even just sort of bleed into where you want it to go. See, I'm just tapping color onto the edge, and the water from where I had played with it before is making it sort of, you can kind of almost see the color follow the water and fill in that space. Isn't that pretty? It really does give it a very nice watercolor look, even though I really didn't do very much to that. I really just added water. I added just a tiny bit of the toffee. Okay, so that's another way that you can do some watercolor. I wanted to show you some watercolor with this gigantic Santa stamp. This Santa stamp is really fun, and I'm going to use the intense black, and you can see that I've been using this Santa stamp a lot because I've been making a few Christmas tags and Christmas cards using him. So I'm using the intense black, and I'm going to stamp him out. And the other thing I want to do, besides stamping him here, I want to show you the watercolor paper that Close to My Heart carries. So this is the Tim Holtz Distress watercolor cardstock, 10 sheets, 8.5 by 11. And it's really good with any kind of mixed media, stains and paints and crayons and inks and texture, paste, whatever. Now, it's hard to see, but one side has a real texture to it. There you get a vision of what that looks like. It's kind of rough and bumpy. And then the other side is really, really smooth, like White Daisy cardstock. And so one of the, when I'm stamping, I don't like to use the rough and bumpy because you may not get as smooth of an image. But so I'm going to stamp on the smooth side. Technically in the art world, my understanding is the rough and bumpy is the correct side. So when you see watercolors done like paintings and things, if they're done on this paper, they're going to be most likely on the rougher, bumpier side. I don't really think there's a wrong and a right. But you can see, there's my two images, right? There's a slight difference in the color of the paper, but otherwise the images look the same. Now, what I want to show you, I want to show you a few different things. So, I have here all my watercolor pencils. I'm trying to pick them up. I love, these are like my #1 go-to coloring. I love markers, but sometimes markers are a lot. And so these are colored pencils, watercolor pencils. So let's just color his pants. I'm going to get a couple of reds out here. So I have red, I have like a brown, and I think I even have sort of a darker, that's pink. I could use pink. Let's just use these two. So when you use colored pencils, you really do not want them to be sharp and pointy, because when you color, what happens is you get sharp and pointy scribbles like that. You won't be able to watercolor those out. You can try, but you'll probably always see that scribble. It's hard to cover. Do you see it? It's not very pretty. So when you're using watercolor pencils, or even any colored pencil, you really want to scribble them down until the point where they're sort of flat on one side and they're not making scribble marks. So you want a side that's almost all my pencils have a flat, like a flat tipped side. And that is because they just are better to color with that way. So let's start with, let's just do part of his coat. Let's do this leg of his pants. So all I'm doing is a really light touch of the lightest color of red. Now, This is on the watercolor paper. See, I just scribbled. See, it looks scribbly a little bit, but I'm gonna add more layers. Now I'm gonna take that and I'm going to shade it even a little darker along the edges of the leg, right? And there would be a shadow under his shirt because it hangs over his pants. And the cool thing, again, about a lot of stamps is they have lines on them that show you where the folds are, where the shading should be. And so this part right here will be the lightest, and then this will be darker. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's take our water, and I have my napkin here. I'm just gonna tap it off a little bit. I don't want it like drenched, right? I'm gonna start by lightly going over that center area, and then I'm gonna go around the edges. I don't want it to look like a halo. So again, rinse, tap, and then I'm gonna go over it and blend those edges just a little bit. So you can see that I have a center that's light and then it gets darker around the edges. Now I'm gonna take my darker color. I wanna scribble it and make sure it's not like scribble marks. And I can either wait for this to dry and then just go in and make it darker, or I can take my pen and dip it in the water and tap it off just a little bit, and then I can go right onto my pencil and look at that. I'm adding water and I'm picking up some color onto my brush, and not very much, right? Not much. And then I am just gonna go where I shaded, like right around the edge, right under the coat, and around the edge, and where those lines are. So by picking up a little bit of water, tap it off, pick up a little of my color on my pencil, and I am just going around the edge. Now, let me show you what that looks like. Not perfect, but not bad. So again, I'm gonna rinse out my brush, and I'm gonna tap off the extra water. I just want it damp. I'm gonna start again into the center, and I'm gonna go out towards the edge, and I just wanna blend that a little more, just so it's not like there's not like a big line around it, right? What do you think? I think that looks really good. Looks good enough for me. I love it. So, and then if you get too much color, the nice thing is you can lift color with your brush. So you can get it wet, tap it off, and then just lift that color using water. That's all. And look how great that looks. I think that looks really good. Okay, now I'm gonna do the exact same thing, only on white daisy. That was watercolor. Okay, so here I have my, now you may notice, I don't know if you'll notice, but when I color on here, I'm pushing the same amount as I did on the watercolor paper, but I'm getting a much lighter effect, and it's a little more scribblier looking. And the reason for that is the tooth of the paper is so smooth here, where this has a little tiny bit of a bumpiness to it that grabs the pigment. So this one's gonna look a little bit different, but we're gonna get the same kind of thing. So I'm gonna take my plain water, tap it off a little, and I'm just gonna go over all of my color just to smooth it out so I don't have scribble marks, right? Now I'm gonna take my darker color, and I'm gonna do that same kind of thing. Now on this one, I can, since I didn't get any shading at all, I can rinse this, get my thing here. Tap this off a little bit, and then I can go on to my original color that I shaded with. Like this is my original red, and I can just concentrate the color a little bit more using right from my tip of my pencil. So it's kind of the same effect, not quite as dark. And now I'm going to take the darker pen. Now if I let this dry, I could just take this pencil and draw on it and do the same kind of thing, but I'm never that patient. So here I am with this kind of brownish color, and I'm just going to go around the edges just like this, just like I did before. And I'm gonna say, I think I used this red instead of brown because this is a lot more brown. Okay, I went too dark, so again, tap, lift, lift. Still looks great. Okay, let's try this again. Try it with the red or brown-ish color. It's more of a dark red, not quite so old-timey. All right, and then you can see I essentially get the same look as I did with the watercolor paper. Tapped water off my brush, and I'm just gonna smooth and lift a little right there and blend it, just so I don't have like a strong line. So there's the two, and you can pick which one you like the best. But to me, they're very similar, really similar. And the difference is really when you use White Daisy, it takes a little more work to get more color onto it, and if you use too much water, it starts to do that wavery buckle thing, where this will not do that. I could put a lot of water on here before it would buckle. Eventually it would, but you would have, I mean, there are people who do total like washes of water, full on water, and that does not buckle. So that's, if I did that on this paper, you would start to see it, the finish of it get soft, and it would start to like get bumpy. So, okay. I really love the watercolor pencils. If you wanted to just color using watercolor pencils and nothing else, there's no reason why you can't. When you color with pencils, you just want to put, I'm holding my pencil kind of sideways, not with the tip down, because you really don't want like scribble marks in it. And you don't want to push very hard the first time. So the first time is just to put a nice even layer, right, all along. And then I usually go with a little bit of a darker color. And then I go a little darker into the shaded areas. This one's a little wet because I was using it for watercolor. And the more layers you add, the more shaded it will look. And you just keep adding more and more until you get the color that you like. So that's pencils. That's just plain pencils. And if you get a scribbly look that you just hate it, go back with your water real light and just go over it, and you'll get a more blended look like that. And if you hate that, you can, you know, let's say, oh gosh, I got too much there or whatever, you just take your wet brush, wet clean brush, and just lift it, and it'll remove some of that color. Cool, right? Okay, so there's those. Let's see, what else did I want to show you? with that. Oh yeah. I also wanted to show you that I kind of, like, you can scribble your color out like this onto a piece of cardstock, and then you can use it like a palette. So I'm adding a little water to it like this, and now I'm going to watercolor with that and see how it looks nice and real light. So I dab in my water, tap it off, pick up more color. I can do the darker color. I can use that as well. So some people will, instead of using it direct from the pencil, they'll color from like a palette like this. And they'll pick up the ink and go over the lines. Now, one of the things I like to do with watercolor, I love how it looks, right? I think this looks, here's the distress paper, the watercolor paper. It looks great. That's great. But I like to add more bling because you know how I am. And so sometimes what I will do is I will take, let me find it. Sometimes I'll take like a Jelly Roll glitter pen or a Spica glitter pen, just any kind of glittery pen, and I will then go around the edges like this and just make little tiny circles on, just to overlap the lines a little bit and enhance where I've shaded. And I really like how that even makes it more defined. And different pens have different effects and different colors, obviously. But this is one thing you'll notice is like, yeah, somebody asked me, I'd be like, yeah, I watercolored that, plus I added stuff to it. And the other thing you can add to it is, let me put this away. You could take, for example, your red marker. You could add your red marker to it just around the edges like this. And add just a tiny bit of marker to define those images even more. So sometimes I do that. The other thing that's kind of fun to add shimmer, you know, when I like shimmer pens a lot, and you know, some people are not into all the shimmery look, but I love to do shading with my shimmer pen. So sometimes I'll go over it like with that. I just think it adds a little extra definition. Isn't that cool? I hope you love that. I think it's fun to do that. If you just have a plain clear shimmer pen, it looks fine too. It looks really nice too. So you can just go over the whole thing. Make it all shimmery. It's hard to see the shimmer, I bet. But there you go. Cool. So those are the different ways that I watercolor. Now most people, when they look at stuff I color and they make comments, they talk about my markers, because I've been using a lot of markers. And like, here's my fish. So, you know, this one I colored with a light color of marker and shaded with a dark. That one's pretty basic. And then this one I used 3 different colors of yellow. So the different, sometimes to get your images to look really good, it takes a lot of shading, and other times it doesn't take much at all. So let me get my white daisy back in here. And let's, for example, use the little raccoon. And I'm going to use intense black because I want to use my markers. Okay. I have on the other side, I have the little squirrel. So I'm going to go ahead and stamp the little squirrel too. Maybe I'll do him a couple times. He's super cute. And that's from the Thoughtful Critters set. All right, let me just get my markers over here. Oh, you know what? While I'm stamping, I also want to stamp this. This is the pumpkin treats, and I thought it'd be fun to color in that Frappuccino or frozen drink. So I'll stamp a couple of those. This is something that I do when I'm, you know, watching TV or watching videos on YouTube or whatever. I will stamp a whole bunch of images on a piece of paper like this, and I'll just sit and color. And then when I'm done, I don't have to worry about all that stamping. I know my ink is dry, and I can just color them all in and then come back to it later. Oh, you know what? While I'm here, I think I'm going to stamp this little heart as well. You guys are going to be like, okay, enough. All right, let's just say, let me stamp a couple of those. So shading, I think, is one of the hardest things to learn. I had a lot of, several, not a lot, but I had several art classes where that was taught. And in my family, my mom and my uncle were both really good at drawing and painting, and they were both what I would call informal artists. I mean, they were both like really good, and so I feel like I've learned a lot from them in shading. Most of the time when you learn about shading, you hear like, okay, let's say your light source is here, everything on this side will be light and it'll be dark on the opposite side, right? Because it'll be in the shade. But when you're looking at something, I think of it as head on, and I think like the dark sides will be the ones that are going around the cup. So if you look at a cup, the front of the cup is light, and then it will go dark and dark around the edges. So the darker part needs to be on these sides, right? So let's start with those. I have my handy dandy tri-blend markers, which are incredible, and I have this cheat sheet of colors that I scribbled out just so I know what colors I'm grabbing for. But I'm just going to start with my red to show you. There's a light, a medium, and a dark. So let me just show you what that looks like. There's light, there's medium, and then you flip it around and there's a dark. And if you just do that alone, they blend. I mean, really, this is cool. That printout I can send to you. Actually, I may even have put it in the files of our page, but I'll look when I get off of here. So the cool thing about this is you can go back over all three colors with the light and blend all the colors even more. So when I'm going to do something like, for example, this heart, and I want it to look like it's a dimensional item, I want to start with it being light in the center, and you can color the whole thing or you can just color the center, and then the edges of it are going to be darker, and I'm just making little bitty circles. I'm trying to do this closer. little bitty circles around the edge. And do you see how it looks like it's dimensional? And then to make it even more so, I can use a third color and just make an outline like that. And it really looks dimensional. It looks really good. But if I am like unhappy with how that looks, I can go back to the light color and I can blend that even more on the edges, okay? And if I get too much, let's just say, oh my gosh, that is like, I lost my definition, I need the center more. There's something called a colorless blender, and it has two sides. It has a wide side, like a chisel, and a small side. And it's like an eraser. It's like a color eraser. All it is the alcohol ink, and it removes, hear me scooching? I'm adding that alcohol ink onto there, and even if my color gets onto my marker, it won't transfer. And look what I did. I erased the center. You wouldn't want to do that on a huge something, but that is really, really cool. The other thing you can do to make it look dimensional is you can use these little white pens and you can add like a shine line where the light is hitting it. Do you see that? So that's really cool. That also makes it look more dimensional. Cool. Now, okay, you're like, oh my God, so much coloring, so much coloring. This little guy, what a lot of people have been doing is taking one of the grays, say the brown gray blend, and they've just been taking, let's just take the mid-tone, and they've just been going around the edge to color him. A little bit of shading, not much, just to go around the edge. I'm just doing a little bit. And then right here where his, like where his hair, I don't know, they have little lines there. I'm just gonna color over that. That's like a nice thing on rubber stamp, on stamping. A lot of stamps have that shading already on there for you, and that's where the darker shade goes. Look at that, that's just one color, and isn't that cute? That would look totally fine on a card. Nobody looks at that and goes, no, why didn't Connie finish coloring in that raccoon? That's so weird. But if you did, you could take, if you really felt like, oh my gosh, it looks unfinished, you could take the lighter tone of that same thing and just color it in, and it would be done. Or you could do this on colored cardstock. Like if you stamped this onto a gray or light tan type cardstock and then used your marker just to outline it, it would give it a little dimension and it would just look more real, for, you know what I mean. Moose, get out of there. Sorry, my dog's getting into mischief. Okay, let's color one of these cups because I feel like these cups are one of those things that I have been having a lot of fun coloring. So I'm gonna get out my magenta color, and I kind of like when the center of my heart is the lightest red possible, which is actually probably a pink, and then use the light red to go around the edges. And I really like that. I mean, that looks cool to me. That's a really simple way to get a little dimension. It hardly shows. I don't know if you think that's worth it or not. The other thing, if I wanted to make it, let's just say I wanted to make, you know, the cup green. I have this Alpine blend, which is like 3 different colors of green. And I'm gonna color this in. Not everybody is into coloring. I realize this. And it does take a little practice to get faster at it or to not be sloppy, because I have a tendency to go a little too fast and be sloppy. Okay, so it looks totally fine, just like that. You could stop and be done. Hi, Stephanie. Hi, Tanya. All right, so I'm gonna go with my middle. And now, okay, remember how I said the front is gonna be light, it's gonna be darker as in the shade as it goes around the edges. So you want the darker shade to be around the edges, right? This is where the light doesn't hit it as much. So I'm gonna put, and I'm gonna go ahead and do a little outline like that. So what you see is basically I've outlined it with a scribbly green. The third thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take the super darkest one, and I'm really gonna just barely put any in the darkest shady area, okay? So this will be my third color, but see how it's like in the darkest area only. Okay, now I go back. This is the magic. You go back with your lightest color again, and you kind of scribble. It's hard to do up in the air, but I'm gonna show you. You kind of scribble along those and recolor. And do you see how it's like making that all kind of smoother and more blendy? So I just kind of do that. And you can see that you could even just put more color down, more of the same color down over and over again. So if you're a Copic marker person, you could let that dry just a little bit and then go back and do the light again, do the light again, and it will get a little darker on the edges. I sold all my Copics. Actually, I gave them away to someone because honestly, I did not like that you had to have 3 shades of every color in order to color a simple heart, or to make something that I thought, you know, looked really good. I just felt like it needed more shading, and I got tired of pulling out, oh, I need 3 colors of pink, 3 colors of whatever. Anyway, you know what I mean. So let's just say this is like a peppermint. So I'm gonna put a little of the pink topping, and let's just say, okay, I don't love that. That's the pale pink shade. That doesn't look good. I could go in, back in over it with my medium, and wow, that makes it look a little better, but it's still not the pink, the fake color pink that I see at the coffee store. I go with the darker and just outline it. And then I'm like, okay, yeah, that's what I was going for. Isn't that cool? And if you feel like it's not blended enough, you go back with your palest shade and smoosh it around a little bit, and it'll all blend together. And again, if you feel like you did too much color, I just got too much, you use your blender pen eraser, and that will scribble out some of the color. And basically you're just removing a little bit of the color that you added. Now there's a trick. Now there's a lot of white on this cup, right? There is a trick with white to make it look really cool. So I'm going to pull out a couple of colors here. Let me find my colors. There we go. I have a true blue and a gold brown, and this is the dark side and this is the light side. Okay, so this whipped cream, I picture it a little bit more bakery color. So I'm going to use my gold brown, and I'm just going to highlight around the edges just a little bit. Because I want it to look like it's white, but it's got shadows. So I made it look a little more like what I would think marshmallow or whipped cream or something like that. That's the color you would use, something super pale tan color. Now, if you're doing that kind of same thing with something that's more of like ice or a clear dome cover or something like that, you could use the palest blue in your stash. And it will still look white, but you can see it has like a blue dome. So when I do this, and see how it has these two little lines, I'm going to go over those too. So you can kind of see, you can do that with Santa's beard the same kind of way. Let me see if I have my Santa over here still. I've started burying everything, sorry. Oh, I guess Santa on the same page. So when I do this Santa, for example, I think of his beard as being just a little bit gray. And so I pick my super lightest color of gray, and I don't want his whole beard to be gray. I just want the illusion of a little bit of gray. And so I'm just tapping it into the shaded areas. I am not coloring his entire beard gray. Do you see? I just barely put any color on that at all, but it really did add some dimension, even though there's hardly any color there. And then but then when you think of like his cuffs and the pom-poms, like the fringe on his coat and that kind of thing, you think of it, it needs to have a little something. So I'm just gonna put, you'll notice a lot of people will put just a little tiny bit of blue, and that gives that the shading that needs. I think it's cool. So the other thing that you'll see, let me just finish like doing this cup, because I feel like I need to finish the cup. Let's do some stripes. And I'm just gonna, there, good enough, right? It's Christmassy, it looks good. You could do anything you wanted to it, around the edges, whatever. I could do another pink. I just think this turns out really, really cute. All right, so the cup looks great, but it would look even better if I started messing with it a little bit. I got out that ice gray blend again. It's gray, and there's 3 tones to it. Let me just show you. Here's light. It's got a little bit of a bluish tone, and here's the dark. Now, there's the gray, there's the ice gray, and then there is this brown gray. And it is the same way. It has 3 tones. I went forward and backwards, sorry, forward and backward. But you can see they each have 3 tones, and neither one of them would look bad. But I have a tendency to use the more golden brown tones for like animals and things like that. And I use the icier tones for things that just need a shade on them. And you can pick whichever color you want. So I always start with the light one because I never know for sure. I don't want to mess up what I've done already. And this is going to look weird. You're going to be like, what are you doing? So I'm going to just start, and I'm going to go over this in gray all the way up the cup. And I'm going to go all the way up the cup. And then I'm going to do a little bit down here. And you can see what I've done is I've added shading. Now up close you're like, whoa, but look at it. Look at it from a little bit farther away. Doesn't that look great? I think it looks great, and it's totally fine. So if you want to add some shading, you can always add gray. And there, you will notice, like if you watch people color online, some people will even add the gray to the outside just a little bit. Especially before they cut it out, because what that does is it adds a little bit of shading, and it doesn't make your white look so stark if you're not a perfect person, like when you fussy cut. And for the straw, okay, this will kind of blow your mind too, but if you have this like peppermint straw, and you take this gray and you just make, I'm going to try to do this in the air. I don't know, just so you can see it. But if you just take your gray and go up one side of your straw, and then real light the other side of your straw. Ooh, I didn't do too bad. Okay, look at that. That makes that straw look rounded. It looks a lot more dimensional than this straw. And I used gray. So when I buy my markers, if you're gonna start buying individual markers, like my most used color is obviously red, but these 2 right here are the ones that I've had to replace because those are the ones I use for shading all the time. And I've had my markers for about almost a year and a half, almost 2 years. Because when they first came out, I snatched them up. And I use them all the time. Obviously, I use them all the time. Okay, so let me just show you. Let's make this squirrel. I'm going to use my mid-tone of the brown gray to do the squirrel. And I'm just going to, look at me, scribble him in. I like these squirrels to have a little white belly like that. And I am only going to put the light gray up here at the top. I try to preserve my lighter colors as much as possible since I do use them so much. Okay, now I'm going to go to the darker color, and I'm going to color the rest in with the dark like that. And I'm going to just do a little shading under his arms because there would be a shadow there. And I like to do a little bit of an outline around his face. I like a little bit of an outline here and there just to make it stand out. Then I go back with the light color and just blend in those ones that look like they're not blended very well. You don't have to. They look fine, not perfect, but you can kind of see I colored him in. I think he looks really cute. And then maybe I take a darker brown for the acorn. since I have two shades, but isn't that perfect? I did the dark brown for the top and the middle tone for the bottom. And ta-da. Now see, if I had the Copics, I'd have to find my two different browns and do these go together, and oh my gosh, I don't know, it takes me so long. This feels faster to me. So, is there any color that you want to see blended? Should I make this heart another color? Is there any other image you want to see colored in? I kind of like the aqua blue blend. It's real pretty. It's like a turquoise. So again, start with the lightest, go to the middle, and just do little circles around the edge. And then the darkest, just to put, I'm gonna dot. I'm not drawing, I could draw a line, but what I'm really doing is I'm just dotting along the edge, because that just adds a little of the darker color. And then I'm gonna add my shadow, my little highlight. Ta-da! Okay, let me read here. How about the images that have a solid area, which would end up the stamp ink color? Well, that's kind of like this. And the deer is sort of that way. The deer is weird. Let me do the deer in black, because this is something that is annoying to me about. I love this stamp and I want to do it for some of my Christmas cards, but the annoying part to me is exactly what you said. Okay, so if you look at this image, it's beautiful. It's shaded where I'm going to color it in, but look at his head where the greenery is. And so to me, that's annoying. I want that to be green. I don't want it to look black. You almost can't even tell that it's greenery. And what is that in between the greenery or the pine cones or whatever? You almost can't tell what it is because it's black. So let me get out my handy dandy sheet, and I think I'm gonna pull out maybe the light green and yellow. I don't know what color green we should use. I'll just pull a couple of greens, and then the deer, we can make him like muted brown. Sorry, I have to find I have my color. Let me show you how I have my colors organized. I have them in a frame. It's an 11 by 14 acrylic frame, so it looks like a drawer. And then on the edges, let's see if I can do this without them all knocking over, you can read the colors pretty easily. And I've marked with a Sharpie a little D for the ones that are deep blends, and the ones that are come in the like the essential blends don't have that extra mark. Okay, so what did I do with my, I thought I got out both markers, but now I'm like, where did I put it? Muted brown. I guess I could use gold brown because I don't know where I put my muted brown. Is it in front of my face? Okay, just losing my mind. No big deal. Oh, there it is. I must have put it back. Okay, so let's start with the deer. Those are my colors that I have. So I'm going to start with the super lightest color because he has some white on him, but a lot of fawns are super pale on the underside like this. I don't know about you, but that squishy noise made by these markers is really annoying to me. Okay, so I am just coloring him in. I want to leave some of his dots almost white, right? And then I'm going to use my mid-tone to do kind of the shaded area. Like that. And I think that looks pretty good. I might use the dark tone just to emphasize a couple of spots here. They're really in deep shade, but really unnecessary to do that. Okay, so the deer looks pretty good, I think. I don't even think I'm gonna go over it again, but I think the deer looks pretty good. So let's do this. Now, if I wanna, so I'm going over this in green where I think the greenery is. And by going over the black and intentionally going out of lines, it just looks more like a wreath. Now I'm taking my darker green and I'm going over the ones that are super dark. And then I'm going to do my middle tone to just make those ones that are showing not quite so bright. Now I have a few little berries. Right there. And I know you probably think this is crazy, but I'm gonna put a little bit of pink on his ear and a little on his cheek. Probably unnecessary, but there. What do you think? Does that look okay? Now you can tell that it is greenery and it doesn't look black. It just looks like super dark green. And I could have probably even used the yellower. I have a green that is a lot more yellow colored. Let me see. Yellow green. Gotta find it though. I just had that one out a couple of days ago. I was messing around with it, so I probably didn't put it back with my other greens. But like, you know, some greens have more of a tone like that. I don't know if it would show, but that might even be more elegant looking than the green I chose. Not quite so grass green. Like that. Does that look okay? So that's what I do when things have a lot of black. And I still stamp them in black, even though, like for this, you know, when I stamped this little deer in toffee and just did the watercolor effect on it, look at the difference. To me, there's like no difference. I mean, that is like so much better. And that's, I don't know if I could, I don't think I could watercolor over this brown and make it look green enough. Let me see. Squish. I just feel like there's not enough color on that. There we go. Yeah, I just don't like it. I just don't. It would have to be a lot darker. I just don't think I could watercolor on my dye ink like that. I would have to do it in black first. Get away from the door, Moose. My neighbor is outside working on lawn and stuff, and so Moose barks at him. He sounds so vicious. Okay, so there's all my hints and tricks of coloring. I love to color in these images like this, and even when I water, these are watercolor pencils, I like to do dark at the edge where there's going to be shading, and then go lighter, and then when I go on it with my water, I go from the light to the dark and then blend it out. There you go. You don't have to buy really expensive watercolor pencils, but I can tell you that if you do, it's easier. It's easier to look professional if you spend more money on watercolor pencils. The cheap watercolor pencils just don't have as much pigment. You have to work so hard to get them to look good. And then sometimes, like I said, after I watercolor something, I'll even go over it with a marker on the edge just to add the extra shading, to add the now a true art person would never do that. They would just